An XML declaration is the last thing we're going to look at as we look at the pieces and parts of the document. Now, in an XML declaration, and by the declaration, I'm talking about this very first line in an XML document. This tells the particular processors that may be using this document exactly what this document is, information about the document. For example, you'll see there's a version attribute here. This can either be 1.0 or 1.1. Now, 1.1 is available to some parsers and so forth, and it's part of the standard, but it's not really widely used yet. So there's a number of reasons why you would or would not want to use 1.1. Why would you want to use 1.1 if you're trying to use some other language, such as Cambodian, Burmese, Mongolian, and so forth? Then you need 1.1 to get those character sets. Does your data contain obsolete non-text control characters such as vertical tab, form feed, or bell? Remember bell in the old typewriters and some of the old environments that we were still using those? If you don't have those, then stick with 1.0. For the most part, stick with 1.0. But there's something real interesting here. For now, this is not even required. Notice I'm just going to take this out, save my file, then go open it, and notice IE opened this just fine, no problem. So what's the big deal about it? Well, the deal is you'll see situations where this thing can really make a big difference. Okay, I'm going to put it back because there are other attributes that we can add to this to tell this document how to behave. You'll also see later on when we use XSLT to transform this, we will use another processing instruction very similar to this one. First of all, there's the version attribute in the XML declaration, and it tells the parsers or anybody consuming this data what version of XML this was written in. That can be very important, and it will be more important over time as we get different versions out there. Now, the encoding attribute. There's an attribute that I haven't been using. The encoding attribute, I can set it equal to, and notice I can say Unicode. Or if I want to use a different one, I can say ISO's 8859-1 standard. And this tells it what kind of character sets, what kind of symbols are out there in the character sets and how to read them. And I don't want to get into all that now. This starts to get pretty deep. Go dig through some information. Go do some more reading on the character sets and so forth. Now, this is telling it how to encode the stuff that it's seeing. Now, after you figure out what encoding you want, you can put it in here. Now, the bottom line is if you don't have an encoding attribute, and this is optional, if you notice I haven't been using on any of my examples so far, then it's going to default to the Unicode character set. That's not a problem because the first 128 characters in the character set, 0 to 127, are the same in Unicode. So, as they are in standard ASCII. So I'm okay there. Now the next one that I can put in is the standalone attribute. Now if I put standalone and set it equal to no, then this is telling any other parser that tries to read this XML document, you can't just view this XML document. It has to have some sort of transformation or document type definition or something like that with it. So we'll get into that a little later. And again, this is optional. Now if I set standalone to yes, it would tell the processor, look, you can just read this data and use it as is. Now that gets into that question of how am I going to use XML? If I'm going to pass XML to your company from mine because it's information that maybe you purchased from me, then I need to somehow restrict how you're going to use that data or help you in how you're going to use that data. I don't want you just using this data or consuming it in this form. I want you to have to use a document type definition or something. So I'm going to tell it this is not a standalone document. You can't just open this up and use it. It's not in the form that it finally needs to be when you actually present this. So that's what the standalone is going to do. Now, all that you see in XML with all of these instructions and so forth, keep in mind, always take it back to what we're trying to do is create a generic descriptive language for our data, so that I can describe the data however I want to, send it to you, and you can understand the context I described it in, and then consume that data from that standpoint. And this XML declaration is the very first part of that, and it's what really starts to lay out for you what this document means, how it's coded, how you should read it, and how you should treat it.